Listen to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball. Guaranteed to start arguments, not end. This episode features the 9 greatest hitting duos. Why 9? That's baseball. 9 players, 9 innings. Prime 9. Rest assured, there are more than 9 sweet-swinging, run-producing hitting duos, one more formidable than the rest. So it was awfully tough to gain membership into this exclusive club. Obviously, we took into account both players' entire hitting repertoire, beginning, of course, with their combined ability to reach base.
With a line drive into the stands, Joe turned a new page in baseball history.
We looked at their batting averages.
Another base hit for Albert Pujols.
And their power.
It's long gone and far away.
And you won't find any one-year wonders here either. No, our tandems all played together for quite a few years.
Mantle and Maris, dial M for murder.
It's no surprise that there are some very big names on this list, including quite a few Hall of Famers. One fellow who is not in Cooperstown happens to be half of our first dynamic hitting duo, number 9, on Prime 9. In the pantheon that houses the greatest hitters ever to play the game, you will surely find the name Joe DiMaggio.
Yes, it's the Yankee Clipper himself, Jolton Joe DiMaggio. To this all-time great goes much of the credit for the success of the Yankees.
You must be special to be an all-star every single season you play in the majors.
Joe D was one of the best hitters in the game. He hit a lot of home runs, drove in a lot of runs. He was very charismatic. Everything he did was with class and dignity. And when you look at him, you just admired him so much.
DiMaggio smashes a long drive just inside of the foul pole into the lower left field stand.
Joe DiMaggio is a superstar. And the reason why the Yankees were so successful is because DiMaggio had a teammate in Charlie Keller.
Keller, the man they called King Kong, was the perfect complement to Jolton Joe.
He was strong, and he just had that appearance of a guy that had tremendous power. And, of course, when he'd swing the bat and hit it, he was quite destructive.
The rookie right fielder lifts a long, high fly which sails into the right field bleachers.
Keller could do it all. Hit for a good average, get on base at a wonderful clip, hit for power, drive in runs.
Charlie Keller, a power hitter. Plenty of home runs in this bat.
For 8 years, they wreaked havoc, including 4 in which they both had an OPS plus of 140 or more.
The two of them were really wonderfully complementary ball players, both very adept at driving the ball, both wonderful run producers.
Together, they led the Yankees to 5 pennants and 4 World Series titles.
DiMaggio and Keller are truly one of the great hitting duos of all time.
One of the game's greatest center fielders was a man known as the Kid.
Ken Griffey Jr. was a guy who had one of the most beautiful, amazing swings you've ever seen. Nobody could mess with him.
Junior belts a ball deep to right field.
He was just a natural athlete, very smooth. His hitting was something that he was born to do that.
And during Ken's time in Seattle, he was blessed to have by his side the greatest designated hitter of all time in Edgar Martinez.
I don't think there's any doubt, although there have been great designated hitters besides him, that he was the best.
A fastball down the middle of the plate, and baby, he deep-sixed it.
He really turned DHing into science.
This one is what we call the lead hand.
He just turned into this hitting machine, and you hated to see him come up there.
Edgar Martinez with a bomb into the upper deck.
In their 11 seasons together, these hit machines produced some astounding numbers.
You had to pick your poison. Edgar was good at taking the inside pitch and driving it, and Griff was hitting balls no matter where you threw it.
Having those guys back-to-back in that lineup, you're almost happy when Junior would hit a double, then you could walk Edgar.
A tough spot for sure, for when they were Mariners, one or the other led the league in runs and batting twice, on base percentage 3 times, and home runs 4 times.
They put together great at-bats, and, you know, both of them were very clutch guys, too.
Like in the '95 DS, when they worked together to create one of the most indelible moments in Seattle Mariners history.
Swung on the line down the left field line for a base hit. Here is
Their partnership ended after '99 when Griffey left for Cincinnati, but their legacy in the Northwest will live on forever.
Those two hitters, Ken Griffey Jr. and Edgar Martinez, were the two best hitters that I played with.
They were professional hitters to the max.
From 1925 through 32, few players packed more power than a pair of Connie Mack's A's.
Jimmy Foxx and Al Simmons were the same kind of hitter. Now, Foxx would hit more home runs. Simmons might drive in more runs. But the two were basically a double-barreled machine.
Simmons was one of the best players of his era. At his peak, was a legitimate 380 hitter with good power.
In 1930, drove in 101 runs just in his home games alone, half the schedule. And then in 1932, he did it again. He drove in 100 runs in just his home games. He's the only player in baseball history who in 2 different seasons had 100 RBIs just in home games. Phenomenal.
And next to Simmons was the man they called the Beast.
Jimmy Foxx was an overwhelming power hitter, and he was just the physical presence that really intimidated a lot of the pitchers of his time.
Common saying in baseball that every batter loves his base hits. I'm no exception. I love to take my cuts.
Which he did to the tune of 12 straight 30-home run, 100 RBI seasons with 4 home run titles and 2 batting crowns.
Jimmy Foxx, when you adjust for everything players did, and you adjust for park, and you adjust for error, wasn't just great. He was one of the 10 best hitters in baseball history.
In their time together, Foxx and Simmons were a marvel to behold.
I think when we look back at the numbers, they're almost mind-boggling. These two men were perennial contenders for batting titles, extra base hit titles, leading the league in total bases, RBI, runs scored, slugging.
Behind this powerful duo, the A's won 3 straight pennants and 2 World Series titles.
Foxx and Simmons, with all of their talents and capabilities, were indeed excellent.
Almost 20 years before Simmons and the Beast, the A's had Frank Baker and Eddie Collins.
They were one half of the $100,000 infield, and they also were key ingredients to Connie Mack's Philadelphia Athletics from 1910 to 1914.
Eddie Collins was one of the greatest players of all time, definitely one of the greatest second basemen ever, a no-doubt Hall of Famer.
Just hit for high averages every single season. What a stolen base machine.
In fact, Eddie stole 741 bases in his career to go with his 3,315 hits.
Eddie Collins was the perfect top-of-the-order hitter, a player who could get on base 40% of the time, almost at will, a guy who could create havoc on the base paths. And then up came Frank Home Run Baker.
Frank Baker was actually one of the best players in baseball, right there with Collins.
He hit for power, mostly doubles and triples, in an age when the big swing was frowned upon.
He got the name home run in the 1911 World Series after he hit home runs in consecutive games off 2 Hall of Famers, Rube Marquardt and Christy Mathewson. But he also led the American League in homers in 4 straight seasons from 1911 to 1914.
He also led the league in RBI. And he did this all while playing a position, third base, that at that time was really seen as primarily a defensive position.
Baker and Collins ran roughshod through the league during their 7 years together, leading the A's to 4 pennants and 3 World Series championships.
In the dead ball era, when you're looking at a second baseman and a third baseman that consistently hit 300, and a third baseman that is arguably considered a power hitter for the day, that's an impressive duo.
Number 5. It's also time for the 21st century to chime in via St. Louis.
You had Pujols from the right-hand side, Edmonds from the left-hand side, and they were just consistently coming up with big hits, really solidifying the middle of that order.
Pujols smokes it.
Albert grew up and matured very quickly, and of course Jimmy had all the experience in the world. You know, you just couldn't help but see 2 leaders, one younger and the other one a little bit older, that stabilized a ball club.
For 7 years together, they proved to be a living nightmare for opposing pitchers.
And they really fed off each other. You couldn't pitch around Albert or pitch around Jimmy because one of them was going to beat you.
Edmund was very, very strong left-hand hitter.
Watch him rock and roll. He's going to rock and roll with his leg. Rock, roll, explode.
Blue Holt's all-around hitter. You know, that gives you power.
They had the ability to wait for their pitch. Pitchers would try to be careful, find themselves behind in the count, and then you're in trouble.
Gone! Edmonds drills one to right center.
Albert and Jim are one of just 2 duos on our list to have a season in which both hit at least 40 home runs and had a slugging percentage above .600.
They hit for average, they hit for power, they drove runs in.
Up the middle, Pujols wins it.
Both run well, both smart base runners.
How about that? They put the double steal on, and Edmonds steals home.
Behind Albert and Edmonds, the Cardinals made 5 playoff appearances, won 2 pennants, and captured a World Series title.
The Cardinals are world champions for 2006.
When you go back and look at the times when those two were together, they really became a pretty legit tandem.
For 14 years, Willie Mays and Willie McCovey gave pitchers a case of the Willies.
I used to call them Thunder and Lightning. Willie Mays was the Lightning, and then, of course, McCovey being the Thunder. They were the guys that you definitely wanted to try and keep off the base and keep in the park.
Hall of Famer Willie Mays was more than just a 24-time All-Star.
Willie Mays was the best player I believe I ever saw. You just hated to see him coming to the bat.
Willie Mays digs in.
He could run the bases as good as anybody. He could hit for average and power.
Willie really had a sense of what a situation would bring up if, with McCovey behind him.
I've seen Mays many times hit doubles but stop at first. And a lot of my teammates said, man, he should have been at second base. Hey, if he goes to second, they're going to walk McCovey.
And who could blame them? For the other Willie was a giant amongst men.
Willie McCovey carried his stature to the plate with him. The whole ballpark took on a different proportion. It seemed like he was right out there in front of you.
McCovey connects solidly with all his 200 pounds behind the swing.
He had a big arc on his swing.
It's going, it's gone.
With that arc and that big swing of his, he hit the ball a long way.
It's gone! A grand slam home run! McCovey!
McCovey just had the confidence. Most feared hitter I saw while I was playing. 10 years I played with him, he didn't have a bad year.
Imagine a tandem that combined to average 58 home runs and 167 RBIs a season. That was the show Giants fans got to witness for 14 years.
Mays and McCovey together right there, they were awesome.
And those 2 men are, to this day, the most cherished figures in San Francisco Giants history. Every time they come out to the ballpark, they get nothing but love from the fans, and they truly deserve it.
Two of the best players from the early 1900s could be found on the Tigers in Sam Crawford and Ty Cobb.
Cobb and Crawford in the same outfield, in the same lineup, were a deadly duo.
And they flourished in the dead ball era. With their combined numbers during the 13 seasons, they played together.
Crawford was one of those ball players who just naturally evoked respect from the people around him.
He possessed great power, and many old-timers say if he was playing with today's lively ball, he would rewrite the home run record.
His contemporaries describe him as a powerful hitter. In the dead ball era, that did not result in home runs. What it did result in Sam Crawford's case, was triples.
Crawford, who had been a barber in Wahoo, Nebraska, still holds a major league record for 3 base hits in a lifetime.
But not even that career mark of 309 triples could match the overall prowess of the greatest hitter of his generation.
Cobb was a unique player, probably is as well known for how fierce he was and unrelenting he was as a base runner and an outfielder as a hitter.
Cobb is second all-time in hits, and no one has a higher lifetime batting average.
Did lead the league in batting average 12 times in a 13-year segment. Nobody has had a 13-year segment in which they led the league 12 times. He did it in what was the most important category of his day.
6 times Cobb and Crawford each had an OPS plus of 150 or more, and they consistently led the league in triples.
Very rarely have you seen two outfielders of that high level caliber in the same outfield at the same time.
We now return to Prime 9, where in this episode we're featuring the 9 best hitting duos. These are men who, during their time together, produced some mind-boggling numbers, and did so for an extended period of time. We've covered the first 7, so now it's time for the duos that did it better than the rest, the very best. We begin with number 2. When Eddie Matthews and Hank Aaron were up, home runs were the order of the day.
Eddie Matthews and Henry Aaron comprise baseball's best 1-2 power punch.
Henry Aaron and Eddie Matthews were 2 great hitters. Playing in Milwaukee, too, all the home runs they hit, it was not a hitter's ballpark. So they accomplished a lot between the 2 of them.
Like averaging more than 60 home runs and 200 RBIs a season in the 13 years they played together.
The sound of batting practice is like a cannonading, and you have a feeling that Eddie or Hank will hit one today.
Henry was very laid back. He was not flamboyant. He was a quiet person, and his playing reflected that.
Cameron Hank is in a class by himself.
So steady, so solid, so strong, so good.
When Hank gets good one on the ball, it's long gone and far away.
He made things look so easy that people overlook him. But he was as good as anybody.
Hammer and Hank got many of the home run headlines, but Matthews was just as often the story.
Eddie Matthews was one of the hardest working individuals that I ever met.
Eddie Matthews, the Santa Barbara Bomber, booms his 48-pound rebound of the season, making him for the 2nd straight year the home run king of the Braves.
Great player, beautiful hitting stroke, one of the toughest competitors I've ever met. He was really fun to watch.
Eddie's the man of the hour, the hero of the game.
3 times they finished with the most home runs by teammates, and those totals soon added up.
Matthews and Aaron, most home runs as career teammates.
They hit 863 home runs between 1954 and 1966 as teammates. Also, what's even more intriguing is the fact that on 75 occasions, they homered in the same game.
We'd be hard-pressed to track down a more powerful duo.
Aaron and Matthews were probably as potent a 1-2 punch as you're going to find.
But we did, and they check in at number 1. For there was never a more frightening pair of hitters than Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth.
There were 2 great hitters, and there was a 1-2 punch.
Ruth had changed the face of baseball before Gehrig even got to the team.
He dominated the game like no one ever will dominate the game. People had never seen a ball hit so hard, never seen a ball hit so far, and he did it with such tremendous flair.
Still today, no one has led the majors in home runs, slugging percentage, OPS, or extra base hits more times than Ruth.
It was hitting that went beyond the furthest extremities of the imagination. He just tore up the record book, threw it out the window, and started writing new pages.
While Ruth drew all the attention, another Yankee was also playing wondrously for the fans at Yankee Stadium. His name was Lou Gehrig.
Lou Gehrig was a low-key man, so he played second fiddle. But Lou Gehrig was really out of this world. There's no question about it.
The greatest first baseman to ever play the game is still in the top 5 all time in both on-base and slugging percentage and OPS.
Gehrig was one of the most prolific RBI men in baseball history. In 1927, Ruth hit 60 home runs. So Gehrig came to bat 60 times that year after Ruth had cleaned the bases. And he still knocked in 175 runs.
Gehrig and Ruth had a 9-year span in which they finished 1-2 overall in home runs, RBIs, extra base hits, slugging percentage, and OPS. So similar, yet so different.
Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig are complementary opposites interacting to create the perfect whole.
Ruth always had the flair for showmanship. Gary was just a day-by-day performer.
It's only with the bat in the hands are they similar. Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig combined to create the most concentrated and most sustained run of offensive excellence the game has ever seen or ever will see.
9 years in a row, both Ruth and Gehrig had an OPS plus above 150. No other duo in modern history had more than 3 straight.
They are the gold standard when it comes to offensive duos.
I don't care who comes after them, they'll never match them. Ruth and Gehrig are the dominant players of their era.
Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig are the absolute greatest hitting duo the game has ever seen.
When Ruth blasted 60 home runs and Gehrig hit 47 in 1927, their total of 107 set a new one-year record for teammates. They held that honor for 34 years until another pair of Yankees named Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle closed out the 61 season with a combined 115 home runs.
Mantle and Maris, dial M for murder.
Rest assured that we considered the M&M boys for this show. They simply did not have enough high-level years to qualify. But if you took just the 1960 and 61 seasons, during which Maris and Mantle finished 1-2 in MVP voting both years, led the Yankees to pennants in both years, and combined for an astounding 2-year total of 194 home runs, they'd be right there in the running for the greatest 2-year hitting duo of all time. That's our Prime 9. What's yours?